Moanamaki.
And I note my colleague David Clark, in order to further his political career, has just come and sat next to me just before I take my speech. I congratulate him on his 2 members' bills that he's had drawn from the ballot. I'm not at all bitter the fact that in 9 years I've not managed to get any of my members' bills drawn from the ballot, but I congratulate him because they've been very good bills. That was a very disappointing speech from the minister who just took his seat, because the reason the people in the community of Tamaki are upset is not just because of the displacement that happens when you have a major housing rearrangement like the Tamaki Transformation Project. It's because the government promised them that they would keep the same number of state houses in that community, and then they broke that promise. That community is upset because the government lied to them. That is why they are protesting, not because of the reasons he outlined, but because I turned up to the public meetings that the member didn't turn up to on the Tamaki Transformation Project, that the national government didn't show up to in Tamaki, because Minister Phil Heatley refused, didn't even tell the Tamaki community that they'd changed the commitment. The commitment was that the proportion of state houses would drop, but the number would stay the same. That was the commitment. It was brokered over a long time, and Minister Phil Heatley didn't even show up in that community to tell them that that commitment had changed and that now the number of state houses would drop. And suddenly the document that promised that disappeared from the Housing New Zealand website when Labor put in an oral question on the matter. That's why the people of Tamaki are angry. And this is the kind of behaviour that we're seeing more and more from this national government as the wheels come off in their second term, as we've seen with Mr Banks. And I want to make it quite clear that the police report back found insufficient evidence to support a prosecution, but it noted that Mr Banks did personally solicit and receive donations from Sky City and Kim.com. Now, it might be nice to be able to live in the National Party world where you just forget $80,000 worth of donations, where that just happens every single day, that you get an envelope with $15,000 in it. Maybe in the National Party's world that's normal and you could be forgiven for forgetting that, but I think most New Zealanders accept that it's impossible to forget soliciting up to $80,000 worth of donations, to forget asking those donations to be split into $25,000 lots to evade electoral law, forgetting that you took a helicopter ride to a mansion of an internet billionaire and attended his birthday party. Maybe that's easy to forget if you're a National Party MP, but most people in New Zealand know full well Mr Banks knows what he did and he got away with it. Now, it might be okay for John Key to say, well, I still have confidence in him because he evaded the law and didn't get prosecuted, but most New Zealanders would hold ministers to a much higher ethical standard than that. Oh, Anthony says he wasn't a minister when he did it, so that makes it okay. So it makes it okay that he broke electoral law, admitted to it, the police have pointed it out, and it's okay. It's okay as long as you did it before you were a minister and you got away with it. And then when you're caught out, you prevaricate about whether or not it happened. And when the evidence is finally presented, you admit that you were lying about it. That's okay as long as you get away with it.
I sincerely hope the Speaker has not been admitting that.
Oh, hey, yes, no, certainly not, Mr Speaker. I would never, ever. Mr Banks. And apparently, for the Prime Minister, John Key, that's absolutely fine. And the John Banks affair has been a little bit of a distraction from another debacle that's happening at the moment, which is the government's response to the Treaty of Waitangi Tribunal issue of Māori claims to water rights. This is an incredibly important debate for our country. This has massive implications. And for the government to just say, well, we're going to pretty much ignore it and carry on with our asset sales program, just is so incredibly just defies belief that they don't understand the importance of this report, the deep implications it has for all New Zealanders, in particular for the taxpayers of New Zealand, who are going to have to foot the bill if in the future the government is found to have been wanting in its protection of the rights of those people who are going to come in and buy the shares. If they can say, well, the government was warned about this and they didn't take it seriously, they pushed ahead with their program, and so now we're going to come in and legally challenge the government, who is it who picks up the bill? It's the taxpayers of New Zealand. Now, I know that the government has no other plan other than asset sales. I know that that's it. And so that if they don't push ahead with that, if they don't push, I'm mining off the east coast, as Antoli is pointing out, in the Rokuma Basin, 3,000 to 4,000 metres deep, with inadequate protection in terms of legislation. That's a great plan, Antoli, and I'll be pleased to report to the Gisborne Herald how supportive you are of it.
Brendan Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to say that rail is a vital part of New Zealand infrastructure. But New Zealanders are asking, I've got pictures, don't you worry, I'm bringing them out. But I'm bringing them out because of the safety aspect, because there are derailments every week, but a major one is imminent. And I'd like to see a government actually stand up and say safety is important. But what's very important is jobs for New Zealanders. Now, I'd like to take a walk back in memory lane, because history is important. If we know where we're going to go, we have to know where we've been. And I'd like to take you back to October of 1992. The national government of the day gave financial advisorship to Faye Richwhite of New Zealand Rail. And then we started to see outsourcing. We saw Kiwis losing jobs in maintenance. We saw them attack passenger rail. And in April of 1993, with full knowledge of the financial dealings of New Zealand Rail, all of a sudden Faye Richwhite brokered the deal with Wisconsin Rail and sold New Zealand Rail. Overnight, they made millions of dollars, and the New Zealand taxpayer lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's all starting all over again. What we are seeing at the moment, we are seeing outsourcing. We are seeing New Zealand, the morale of Kiwi Rail at its lowest ebb since 1993. And we are losing workers, and they are not being replaced, and it's all part of the process of this government to privatise Kiwi Rail. The writing is on the wall. If we look at the cost of contracting out, and it's not best practice. In fact, it's dangerous practice, and that was why I had these photographs. This one of a mudslide that creates spreading in railway tracks. I mean, it's there, it's a safety issue. It was given to me by concerned Kiwi Rail staff who don't want to see a derailment. This one here is of a number of sleepers that were bought by Kiwi Rail that are rotten. They have a virus within them. They were supposed to be hardwood, but they got them from South America with a virus within the wood, and you can see the growth within those railway sleepers. You can go along with a great bar, push down, and you will go through the sleeper. Now, this is extremely dangerous, and I will say it again, a major derailment is imminent in New Zealand unless we act. When we look at some of the other things that happened when you bring in contractors, and I'll look at something just on Monday night in the Kaimai tunnel there, where they used contractors to do some maintenance, and some of them didn't even have gas masks. Now, this is an OSH problem. But this is what happens when you get in contractors. It is bad practice, and it is dangerous practice.
Is unlikely to get in contractors.
Sir, National are undermining Kiwi Rail whilst pretending to be supportive. New Zealand First has asked the question 3 months ago about the Gisborne rail link. And what happened there? We were told, oh no, Kiwi Rail are looking after it, it's their problem. But then we find out in a radio interview with Jim Quinn, and he turns around and says that the government is stalling. So one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. One hand is saying one thing, and the other is doing something entirely different. And so New Zealand First is saying, on behalf of the people of Gisborne, those workers in Wairoa, what is the government doing with the Gisborne Railway link? What is this government doing with Kiwi Rail? And today New Zealand First asked the question about the locomotives and about the railway wagons. Now, you know, when you spend $100 million in a foreign country and you're using hard-earned taxpayer money to do it, that money goes straight away into that foreign economy. Now, were you, on the other hand, to build the wagons here in New Zealand, that money would go into the economy. Truck drivers would be paid, farm workers would be paid, the rail workers would be paid. They'd go down the road, they'd buy some bread, the dairy owner gets paid, the baker gets paid, they have children, and so it goes.
Chris Ockenvold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the previous speaker, Brendan Horan, is a man that I've always regarded with a cheerful disposition. But oh, how dismal the speech. I'm sure it's not a natural way for him to discuss things. They seem to have this mindset that everything's got to be covered in mud and miserable. And from the other side of the House, people who've had the full experience of being in government, are they coming forward saying what an exciting time we live in? Are they? Heck. But we do, Mr. Speaker, live in a particularly exciting time. We have the Olympic Games where New Zealand is putting its young people against the best in the world and doing extremely well, and congratulations to everybody who's involved in that. We have the Christchurch development, $1.6 billion already